Hi there, I'm Katy Rose, and welcome to the Rooted Reinvention, a podcast exploring the real-world journey of reinventing who we are without burning out or burning our whole life down. I teach people how to make lasting change by melding my Masters in Neuroscience and my Cognitive Therapy qualification with common self-help tools, spiritual concepts, and my personal experience. Because being yourself doesn't need to feel so damn hard. To get more information on podcast episodes, please visit rootedreinvention.com/podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's great to have you back. We're now in April, which feels strange, to say the least. And I know that April is going to look very different across all the different countries. But one of the things I think that we all have in common is that at times life can feel difficult. And if you've listened before, you know that I talk a little bit about how we're almost taught that it should be easy. And I only have a Master's in Neuroscience and a Bachelor's in Psychology and qualifications in Cognitive Behavioural Therapy and my own experiences, so that's where I'm coming from, but I disagree. I think there is a core truth in that life is difficult but worth it, that it's not meant to be easy. We aren't designed for easy. Like thinking about how the brain creates new connections. It's through messing up. It's through doing something wrong, so it has to try and find a different route through the neurons, or craft new growth so that it can get from one section of the brain to another. Thinking about how muscles repair and how if you're someone who wants to get fitter, who wants to be able to run that mile in a quicker time, or if you just want to be able to walk up the stairs without huffing and puffing and without your heart rate going above 100. So the way that muscle grows is that essentially we work it to the point that it tears and then it repairs it, and in that repair it makes it stronger, and it's obviously new fibre and it creates new layers, etc. I am not a biologist, as you can probably tell. Besides the fact that it's okay for life to feel hard, I think that there's something in us knowing and recognizing it. So I'm a writer and I'm going to come from that perspective today, because if you were to read a book and it was about a person who had everything they want and they didn't really struggle, their journey was a straight line from A to B, nothing got in their way, we wouldn't read it. We wouldn't watch to the end of the film. Like, we wouldn't recommend it to our friends. Like, the thing that makes life is that we overcome struggles, is that we grow as people. I spoke last week about comfort zones and kind of pushing against what is the norm so that we can expand what we're capable of and kind of prove to ourselves that we're capable of doing more. And I remember reading a meme I will at least quote, if not link, in the show notes, that talks about being 18 to 25 is like playing a video game where you've skipped the tutorial and you're just running about with no idea how things work. I think particularly in this day and age, certainly the last sort of 20 years, that's probably true, in that the things that worked in the 80s are no longer really applicable in 2020s. And then kind of when you hit 30 plus, it's when you've figured out how things work, but you've maybe made poor leveling decisions along the way and are now horribly underpowered for what you're meant to be doing. So for those of you who aren't gamers, that may not make much sense, but it's that idea that if we don't have that strong foundation, if we made silly mistakes in our youth that have affected us now we're older, we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work to kind of get back on track. And I say back on track in terms of if we had made different decisions when we were younger, we might be slightly further ahead in our path. And then being 35 plus is coming to the conclusion that if wildly swinging a sword at random while screaming has gotten you this far, you may as well keep on doing it. And it's that idea that when you're sort of 35 plus, well, I don't know how I feel about that being in my 30s, but that idea that there is a point as an adult that you kind of reach where you go, well, actually, I've been winging it up until now, and I'm still here, and I've had some successes, and I'm still kind of making progress. And I think there's that idea of all the shoulds and musts and how things are meant to look, and kind of society has told us and our cultures have given us as a norm. And actually, we as human beings are innately capable of doing anything. Like thinking about a character at the beginning of a book or at the beginning of a game, you can kit them out and decide what equipment they have. You can, if you want to choose your own adventure, you get to make decisions. If you're playing a game, you get to kind of decide where they go first and which side quests or main kind of plot that they go along. They have these kind of subplots and characters in books and movies that kind of distract them a little bit, but also help them grow as people and learn things that might be useful when they come to like the final end point. And thinking about our life like this can be really helpful. Like the reason that this is how it's certainly in the Western world, movies and books and games kind of work, is because we recognize it as our path. This is how life is. It's not easy, you know. Generally speaking, in a game, if you are not facing new obstacles, if you're not being challenged, if you're just grinding the same place over and over again and it's not really a challenge anymore, and you don't feel like you're progressing, you're probably not gone the right way. Like you've probably taken a wrong turn. And if you're not someone who's played a video game with a character, then I guess the next section may be a little bit unusual for you, but feel free to stick around. And I'm thinking about like the lessons that I've learned through video games. And for me, video games and writing stories and making mini films on my phone with my cats or whatever, that is all the same process. It's taking a character and some kind of story or plot or idea and following the journey of it and making decisions. So this would apply for Choose Your Own Adventure, it would apply for like Dungeons and Dragons kind of game where you have a character, it would apply when you've played something on computer like Skyrim or something where you've got a character and you get to decide where you invest your time and energy and skill points and things. And I think there are just some lessons that I always think about because I play video games and because I write stories and make these decisions. And I think these are true for everyone. So whether you do or don't play games, the concepts are still correct. And for me, it's that reminder that we've had storytelling in our DNA for generations, for millennia. We've been telling stories as a way of giving warnings, of trying to explain difficult concepts to our younger people. I love the idea of, we have fairy tales that kind of give children an idea of like right and wrong. We have those kind of stories that talk about morals. If you think about kind of how we as humanity began, it was around kind of storytelling around the fire. It was around having the wise woman of the village who would know all the things from previous experiences and previous people had passed down to her. So thinking about stories, whether it be in a video game, in a movie, in a book, and what we can learn is, I think, very natural for us. And I think it's something that I definitely don't want us to lose in this modern age. So I'm going to talk about video games because I think they're more obvious there. But I think these things can probably be found in most stories as well. So the concept that if you're facing a new challenge or an obstacle, then you're probably going the right way. Like if you're going to be making progress, you have to be pushing that comfort zone a little bit, like we talked about last week. No one blames you if you have to check the map. So that idea that we as people don't pause and reflect and make quarterly, so those of you who know me know that I make quarterly goals, and I have a review once a month where I say what went well in the month, what didn't, what do I want to do more of. It just allows me to prioritise my time and energy on, I've tried to get some more sleep this month and actually it made no difference to my energy. Well, in that case, I can get that time back and use it for something else. So that kind of idea of checking the map, checking, am I making this decision because I want this? Am I taking this qualification because it's what I want? Am I going this way because it's what I need and it's going to take me where I actually want to go? And I think we're not encouraged to do this in reality. But if we were actually out in the woods, and this were, if our metaphorical decisions were physical decisions, we'd be looking at the instruction manual from IKEA. We'd be taking a map or a GPS with us into the forest to work out where we have to go. And it's a good idea, in my opinion, to do that with our life and with our decisions as well. Even if you don't get money for something, you always get experience. So this is something particular to games, that actually if you defeat a certain baddie, or if you make it to a new area, or if you craft something new, you tend to gain experience points that then you can then bank those and basically spend them on a skill later on. So you actually end up being a more rounded, skilled, better off person through the things that you've had earlier that gave you experience. And I think in our life, sometimes we go through experiences, they're not good, they're not bad, they're not helpful, we might never want to do them again, but we have that experience banked, and taking a lessons learned approach from it is never going to hurt. There's a bit of a jokey one that says the best way to become someone's friend is actually to talk to them. So again, in these kind of games, talking to people is how we learn about this area, about the customs here, about how we can fit in, how things work here, and how I can get what I need from this place. And then the jokey bit is that if you want to become someone's friend faster, give them food. This is a common one in gaming too. If you want to kind of get someone to like you more, then you need to give them items. But I think this also works if you think about it on a metaphorical level. But I think this really works in terms of if you want to be someone's friend, you need to give, and that can be your experiences, it can be sharing your story, it can be if they ask for support or help, or do you happen to know XYZ? Being kind of, actually, I think I may have heard this when I was travelling this way, or actually, I don't know about that, but I did meet this other person. And just being willing to have those dialogues and making sure it's not one-sided, I think is how we as human beings kind of are meant to exist. So it's a jokey one in the way it's worded, but I'm taking it anyway. Don't hold on to too many things. You'll fill up your inventory. This is another fantastic one for as I look around at my desk, which is just full of crap. But that idea that when you are a character in a video game, you have a certain number of spaces in your inventory. So in your backpack that you carry with you as a character, you can only fit so many items. And if you want to take certain items to the next area, or to go and sell them, or something, you need to prioritize, because you won't be able to take absolutely everything you find. And everything that's worth something, you won't be able to generally take everything forever. You're going to need to prioritize stuff. Both on a physical level, obviously, we've got kind of decluttering and minimalism and KonMari, and those kind of things have really kind of become a little bit more mainstream lately. But I think mentally, this is something that is huge, particularly with the digital age. We tend to hold so much in our heads. We're always reading something, scrolling through another feed, taking information in, thinking, I need to do this, I need to do that. We're in a culture, again, certainly here in England, I'm hitting this culture where there's always a running to-do list of housework and things that I can do for my day job that will kind of push me forward, that I need to keep on top of, administration to do, bills to pay. There's just this mental inventory that is full of rubbish a lot of the time. And this is why I journal, to kind of get that rubbish out on paper. This is why I write to-do lists and do like weekly and monthly reviews to kind of prioritize, where am I going to spend my time this month? Am I going to look at sleep, or am I going to look at eating healthily? Because I actually don't have the mental space to do both while I work full-time and X and Y. So thinking about what's in your mental headspace and what can you let go of, and how can you learn to prioritize it. If you find yourself failing, so there's a challenge that's too much for you, don't be deterred. Go back, level up, increase your skills, and then come back and try again. So it's that sense of, if we come up against something and we fail, if we didn't do that in video games, or if the character never came against a challenge that they failed at or they struggled with, we wouldn't read the book, the movie would flop, we wouldn't play that game. Like, this is exactly what I was saying earlier. It's that idea that if a challenge is too much for you, then naturally, without all of the shoulds and musts of our kind of cultural programming, the idea would be for us to work on whatever skill it is, go back, kind of regroup, rest up, make sure we're more prepared this time. Now we know what it looks like and what we might need, and then go back and try again. And I think this is something that we don't always do in our real life, because of the way that we are told it should be easy and we should be successful. And on that same kind of thing, if you've tried and failed 30 times, you're probably missing something. So again, in a game, there's that sense of, oh, I really can't get through this gate, I really can't beat this boss, there's something missing here. You've probably missed an area that gives you an item or a skill or the knowledge that you need to get through that challenge. And again, in a book, quite often there will be that time where the hero is kind of, oh, I don't even know what to do, where do I even begin, how do I do this, I don't know. And in that moment of, or just before that final battle, they remember, oh, hang on, I have this, there's actually this, that person said this. And that's where it all comes together. We can miss that in our life. And it's okay to go back and look for it, to go, what is the missing link here? Where am I? What is the phrase that I've missed here? So the two examples that come to mind for me are in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, where he realizes what the mirror can do for him. No spoilers, etc. And in Hot Fuzz, where the person remembers a phrase that someone has given that completely changes who the killer might be. I've tried to make those as spoiler-free as possible, but there's that kind of thing where you realise something from previous is applicable here, and I think that is something that, again, we're not taught to look for in this day and age, and yet is often the main thing, it's the thing that's missing. And that particular point is the one that I tend to see my role as. So in terms of rooted reinvention, it is kind of looking through the roots of who you've been up until now and finding those little bits of insight that perhaps you can't see. They're in your blind spot. Like, I can't see my own either. There's that sense of there are things that we can't see because we're in it. We can't see the wood for the trees. And there are these little insights that will allow us to get through the next kind of challenge. And sometimes we just need a little bit of help seeing them. And again, check your map, talk to people, give them food. This is exactly how we as a species evolve and expand our abilities and our comfort zones. And the final point for me to say from this list of things I've learned with video games is that when you succeed after multiple failures, you feel so much more accomplished, and you'll have gained a lot more experience than if you just did it the once and got through it first time. So thinking about, although things are difficult, although life is hard, after multiple failures, how much more muscle growth will we have had in our physical body because we've done it 8 times rather than just the once? How much more experience will we have gained through the process and the journey? So I appreciate that went very gamer heavy, but I hope that it was helpful even for people who don't play video games. Hopefully you've seen people play video games where there is a role-playing character element, so that this makes sense. And if not, thinking about movies and books that you've watched and read, and where the characters get stuck or have to fight something or have a setback or fail or make a mistake, and kind of looking for those things. Do they check their map? Do they kind of regroup and go back to their friend or their mother or whatever and go, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? And they kind of regroup and replan out how they're going to defeat this challenge. The reason that stories resonate for us is because they are our life. Our life is story. We are characters in our own story. And it's meant to be hard, because otherwise it wouldn't be worth doing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do check the show notes for further information on where I kind of got these ideas from, and some links around kind of moving forward with your own story. And I will speak to you again next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and as always, you can find out more at rootedreinvention.com. Take care, remember you are more capable than you often realise, and I'll see you next time. Bye!